On behalf of all of our CECP companies, as well as our CEOs and staff, I'm delighted to be here. CECP, for those who don't know, was founded by Paul Newman and several well-known CEOs about 15 years ago, really with the belief that corporate America and corporations could be a force for good in society. And there's probably no better way to restore and to build trust than to do good things. And you'll hear those case studies today about companies that are doing not just good, but really terrific things that have great power both internally for companies, but also externally as well. As we look at that, CECP in the last 15 years has really grown to have some 200 participating companies. Those companies, and the vast majority of them with the CEO really on board. If you looked at the revenue of those companies, it would be something on the order of $7 trillion. So if you looked at GDPs of the world, it would be US, China, CCP companies. All right, so it's a pretty large group, very powerful companies that we are really working with. And our job is to really help and encourage and support these companies in doing good. We do that by maintaining the largest database around. We do that with a conference board. We'll share some of those information in a bit. We do that by providing benchmarking and case studies. You'll hear a few of those today, and fast-track consulting for companies. We convene groups around roundtables, specific issues, by geography, by industry, as well as our conferences, one for giving professionals, and the other, which we believe is the largest gathering of CEOs, to talk about social responsibility, to talk about aligning with society, that's held anywhere in the world, coming up in February. And we also try to communicate and really catch companies that are doing great things in the act of doing great things, which is why we have our annual Excellence Awards. So this is kind of what CECP does. We also provide a lot of thought leadership. Jeff Immelt, the CEO of General Electric, talks about CECP being above the fray. And because we get to see several hundred companies, and we've seen them over the years, we really get a good perspective of the best practices, what's working, and some of the key trends that are out in the world. And some of the trends that we are seeing today are, and all of these are affected by trust in some way, some positively and some more negatively. But one is Nielsen, the media and a database company, reports now in the US that 43% of shoppers will pay a premium for products that they believe comes from companies that care. That number is up 22% in the past year. Worldwide, that number is a couple of points even higher than in the US. It says when people trust brands, they're willing to pay extra for those. In addition, if you look at employees, and we heard some great work here on employees and what's happening there, we're finding that 83% of millennials, that those 20 and 30-somethings, care more about making a difference in their role than about professional recognition. They have other studies showing that really care more about that than even the salary you make up to a certain point, and as seen in some of the data we had provided earlier. We're also hearing from investors. Now, there's certainly a lot of short-term investors out there and day traders who are doing it, but an increasing move to longer-term investment. And Bob Eccles up at Harvard has found that companies with cultures of sustainability, transparency, giving back, understanding where consumer trends are, have continued to outperform the market as a whole. And I think more work is coming out on this as we look at a long enough timeline. But investors are still looking short term, but an increasing percentage of those are thinking a bit more long term. With a lot of the growth coming from membership in international markets, and particularly emerging economies, we're also seeing that is raising new challenges. As people go and start doing business in countries they haven't done before, where consumer and challenges in those societies may be different, it's another area that we are seeing creates unique needs. And in fact, both companies will be talking about ways they have addressed those needs over the last few years. And finally, and I guess everybody really kind of trusts in government over the last couple of weeks. I was down in D.C., and it's just really remarkable about just the stories about people who are, if they were ready to start a job, no pay, not going to get anything. However, if you were employed by the government, in most cases you'll actually get back pay when it's all over, but having done nothing during the time we're in this in-between period. You kind of wonder why trust is so low. I was quoted at one time that CEOs were thankful for Congress. And they said, well, why? Because it's the one group rated lower than them. Right? But what's happened is while trust is still low at both government and business, and in the US they actually kind of move together, which is a challenge. When it comes to solving the world's problems, according to an Edelman study, and they're active members of CECP, 65% of the citizens surveyed felt that business was more likely to solve the issues. 15% figured government could get it done. So while the trust level can, I think, be restored and improved by doing good stuff, people do have a belief and an expectation that business can get it done, and they aren't quite so sure about elected officials in government. One of the ways that we try to help restore trust is by getting numbers and visibility and transparency. And CECP annually conducts its corporate giving survey. This is the largest of its kind. And it really provides us a trend of, given those trends in society, how companies are responding to that. This is conducted now in association with the conference board. This year we had a record number of companies participate, 240 companies. We have another 60 who participated in our global survey. And it really looks at what the investment is into society, into addressing community issues. For those who want free downloads, you can see you can go to cecp.co to get that information. We have thousands of downloads every year, but it really is an authoritative source of where companies are investing their community dollars. And a few findings here that we thought were of relevance and helped to set up our group as well. First, despite the slow recovery, which is beginning to move ahead, but not as fast as the market seemed to be, the majority of companies here, over 60%, are investing more today than they were before the downturn. And that is despite really revenues, median revenues that have not been restored. This is our match set of about 100 companies, and it's reflective of the total, are still not back to where they were in 2007. So there is more of an investment in this area by companies. Second area is a lot of that growth is really being driven by non-cash. And we're here, I think, two good examples of what people are doing in that. And in some cases, that's product donations. In some cases, it is employee engagement and time, where companies are investing cash, but also capabilities and expertise into addressing societal challenges. And you can see that number. Pharma companies are big drivers of product donations. So that's a big driver on the far left. But looking at the non-pharma companies, you can see about a 40% increase in the non-cash giving here over the last 5 years since the downturn. Cash has held up. Almost all of the increases come from the non-cash side. Another big area we are seeing is that companies are becoming increasingly focused with their philanthropic dollars, with their societal investment. And the days of giving to lots of people a little bit of money, the old alms for the poor, what Stan Litow at IBM calls spare change, is really changing to companies to make it much more real change, where they're focusing on specific challenges, specific issues they can really make an impact on, much like they would with their business investment. Can't be in every category in every business. Let's focus on things where we can really make a difference. So we're seeing a real increase in this, up about 50%, where companies, a third of companies now, are spending over half of their societal investment in one program area. Still a lot who are in other areas, but this is certainly a trend we are seeing, and I think you'll hear some real strategic investments that our company case studies will share as well. Another key area has been the expansion of employee engagement programs, and you'll hear this a lot from IBM today, but really a trend that has moved up in terms of paid release time programs and outside company time programs, continuing to grow, so it is now the majority of companies that are participating in that, not as it had been around the middle of the market. This is an area we're continuing to see great interest and engagement at the corporate level on. And then finally, we're seeing that most companies are investing internationally. And this trend is up as well over the last few years. It varies a bit by the industry in which people are. But while in most cases the revenue base may be much greater than this, there is a move toward more money being spent internationally. And today, again, I think we're going to hear some good international examples of companies investing in other markets as well. In addition to providing some of the services and the database here at CECP, we also have our annual CECP Excellence Awards. And these are to catch companies in the act of doing good things, because it is good things that help to restore trust as we move forward. And our Excellence Awards are really based on 5 criteria, and these are the criteria that are really the best practices. The most effective companies, the companies that feel best about their programs, that are rated the highest, really are practitioners of each of these areas. And again, we'll hear this, I think, from our panel. One is strategic focus, that the areas where companies are emphasizing, it kind of makes sense, and they are increasingly focused in on those 1 or 2 key areas rather than trying to cover everything that's out there. A second, and you'll hear this again in both cases, is the importance of CEO leadership and executive leadership to really make a difference. There is a lot of sometimes middle management in the company that is not quite get this sometimes. And it's really important. We kind of have the foundation heads get it, and the community relations folks do. The millennials seem to be getting it. The CEO sorts of get it. And how do you get that other group? And really that CEO engagement is absolutely critical from that perspective. A third is that companies are becoming increasingly innovative in what they are doing with their societal investment and with their philanthropic monies, looking for new ways to create solutions, and in some cases, opportunities to not only address societal challenges, but to create new business opportunities for companies as well. Just on perhaps a longer timeline, we just, in fact, at CECP, our chairman, Doug Conant, just published an article which was really about how to think about philanthropy like an R&D investment. So it's an investment in an area. It's not going to pay back immediately. It's going to take time, but it should be consistent with what the company's about. There ought to be metrics along the way, and it can have a very positive impact both on society as well as on an organization and company. But innovative approaches we're seeing continue to increase with really a pool of ways that people can engage with their investments. Another is the importance of collaboration and partnerships. At our annual CEO meeting last year, the #1 topics that CEOs said that they wanted help on is working with other companies, working with other folks. As one of the CEOs said, if you got my kindergarten report card, you would have gotten a big X next to plays well with others. That's how they got to become a CEO. Now they realize when it gets to these areas, the absolute criticality of being able to work with others, whether it's NGOs, whether it be governments, and we'll hear each of those, and even in some cases, working cross-company. And we're seeing a big increase in that in CECP as well. And the final area is measurement. And that investments in this area ought to be looked like investments in any other part of business. It's more complicated, especially on the social impact side, but that we need to continue to find new ways to kind of measure so that we can get better. And also we learn that that which gets measured gets done. Sometimes it gets overdone, I think, in this space, but I think there is a real opportunity for us to continue to drive. So these are really 2 great companies that are good examples of what we are seeing in terms of those best practices. So now, enough of the overview. Let's kind of hear from our participating companies, and if you will, and kind of give us a sense here on, kind of strategically as you think about your. And we'll see some videos and some slides in the past about some of the programs. And the winning awards here were the IBM Smarter Cities Challenge, and we'll hear a bit about what that all involves, and then the Mosaic Villages program. Okay, so one is helping address issues around the globe with big urban areas. The other, interestingly, is really helping the very rural markets around the globe as well, in emerging economies in particular. It's an interesting combination here. This IBM, which I think virtually everybody has heard of. Mosaic, not always as much, although it's increasing here as a sponsor today at these events. But you have 2 companies, IBM, one of the world's large companies, Mosaic, a great size, about $10 billion in revenue. One focused on cities, one more rural, but both leveraging assets and skills that you all have. One, the product, kind of a based program with Mosaic. IBM leveraging kind of the talent and the big data and analytics skills of its employees. Where did the ideas come from? I mean, where did it come from that this was the focus that you all, you're pretty well focused on, the Mosaic Villages as a major part of your program. Where'd that idea come from?
Well, we had this program develop independently around the world. We had a team in India start up a project. We were asked by a customer in Guatemala, like, hey, there's this great organization, why don't you get involved? And then we were approached by Millennium Promise in Africa and said, we're having logistical challenges getting fertilizer into the countries, and how can you help us with that? So we have these implementing partners in each of these regions that we're working with. And these implementing partners have guided us on what their needs are. All of them needed basic agronomic expertise and experience. So we have agronomists who are on the ground that are working directly with farmers, doing training the trainers, providing best management practices, helping farmers learn the right ways to apply fertilizer, what's the right time to apply it, which we refer to as the 4 R's. There's a number of right ways you do all of that. And then we are making sure that we're helping these organizations build their capacity in that way. But we also help them with other interventions that they determine is necessary. So in India, very water-stressed region, IRAD, our partner there, said we need to build check dams so that when the monsoons come, the rain can go in underground in the aquifers, replenish it, and then we can be able to pull it out at the times when is the right time to water. So we're working with these partners and what their needs are. So for us, this has evolved as a program because we had our expertise. We could help get product into countries in Africa. Our logistics team is fabulous at working globally. So they're the ones that went in. They are able to assess how we get product from Florida all the way into Africa to different ports and be able to make that happen. But it evolved because our partners guided us on what they needed.
That's terrific. And it's not just the product, right? It's all the other logistics and infrastructure, which is so critical to be successful in this.
Absolutely.
How about with IBM? I mean, what was sort of the the spark of the idea here that
there was
created
a spark.
that?
Yes, there was a spark. There were a few sparks. Smarter Cities Challenge actually evolved out of Corporate Service Corps. Okay. Which is a 5-year-old program. It turns 5 this year. And Corporate Service Corps itself is based on the Peace Corps. So we were looking at ways that we could help developing countries, new markets for IBM, to help them, again, kind of mirroring what we're doing with Smarter Cities Challenge, but we were focused specifically not so much on cities, but on nonprofit organizations. Okay. And in that project, instead of it being a 4-week assignment, like it is for Smarter Cities Challenge, it is still competitive, but what we're doing is it's a 6-month initiative. So we assign anywhere from 8 to 15 experts, depending on what area that particular nonprofit or that local government wants to work on. And then we spend the first month, the first 2 months we spent just looking at the issue. Mm-hmm. These are international assignments. All of these are international assignments in developing countries. We spend 1 month on the ground, and then we spend another 2 months just doing some post-engagement work. So what we've been doing really with Corporate Service Corps is what we call the triple threat. Sure. So on the one hand, we're giving our employees an unequaled opportunity to be taken out of their comfort zone in their day-to-day jobs. They definitely have skills, but we're taking them internationally. And the second piece is that they're learning more about emerging markets. And then thirdly, it's kind of nice when we're being introduced to certain new markets that know more about our skills. What do we bring to the table? So if, whether it's with Smarter Cities or with Corporate Service Corps, if we're broadening the reach of what IBM does as a company and the impact that we can make, that's pretty nice. That's great. And for us, it's just been an excellent opportunity. Again, professional development, developing leadership opportunities for our employees. And we are so pleased with the way that the project is going, Corporate Service Corps, and obviously Smarter Cities Challenge, that we're continuing to move forward. So that's great. Yeah,
that's great. Now, in both organizations, the role of the CEO. At CECP, CEOs are our members. We see it's very important. As a former CEO of a publicly traded company, sometimes you think you have a lot of influence, and sometimes you realize you don't. But the kind of role that your CEOs are playing, how important has that been with Ginny up at IBM? And we can talk, Ginny Rometty at IBM. We'll talk about Jim Prokopanko.
we are so lucky in citizenship that we have our CEO. And I'm not saying that because I have to. I really mean it. Ginny sees the benefit of what we're doing. We're aligned with the business. So not only are we through, for example, services grants, IBM sells services. Well, we've converted these services. We have about 15 offerings to nonprofit organizations around the world that look at developing leadership skills for the company, mapping out strategies for social media, how to improve your web presence, project management skills. So all of these services grants are supporting these organizations. So that's one thing where we're using our own resources, we're using our own programs that we're selling out to the public. We're doing that with nonprofit organizations. They're getting the same benefit. For us also with Smarter Cities Challenge and Corporate Service Corps, in both instances, we can actually bring in clients. So clients then will come on these international assignments.
Wow.
And what they're doing is, they're getting a different perspective, again, a different perspective on the company that's selling to them. Their own executives, part of Corporate Service Corps, are getting an experience internationally that they wouldn't have before. And they're going back to Ginny and telling her how this was a life-changing experience for them.
That's great.
That's gold. So she's always talking about three things: Smarter Cities Challenge, Corporate Service Corps, and then PTEC, which is the grades 9 to 14 educational reform that we've been engaged in.
Right.
So she is our biggest fan. She's she's just behind everything that we do because, again, we've aligned it to the business.
Sure, that's great. Now at Mosaic is a company that recently went public and had been part of a joint venture. Jim Prokopanko is the CEO. What's Jim's role in this? Is he helpful?
Jim has provided tremendous leadership for our company. We were founded 10 years ago as a company, so we're pretty new compared to many. And Jim's leadership, Daryl and I were talking about this earlier, Jim believes in community investment. He believes in our sustainability focus. There's just no question for anyone that this is a priority to us and we're going to make these kinds of investments. And Jim was part of the leadership driving force behind our targeted 1% of profits going to our community investments globally. We have made sure that we've built a number of partnerships around his leadership. And then with the Mosaic Villages project, he saw the importance of these projects and was fully supportive of us bringing them together. So now that's why they're called the Mosaic Villages project, and they had been sort of independent in each of our geographies separately. As a part of that leadership, he has requested significant investments by different leadership team members around the company. So we have a cross-functional team that looks at these villages projects. We're assessing where the right places to go are, our partners doing what we need them to do. And then he also was really the one to say we needed to have a campaign and share with our employees about what's happening. What is the company investing in with this? So through that campaign, we're going out and we're bringing the remote villages to the employees in our plants and mines, and we're helping them understand what we're doing with it. And one of the pictures you'll see flash up here is of a woman, Teresa, in Kenya, and she has 2 children and she has a field, and we're telling the stories how previously, before she joined the program, we had 1 bag of cotton that could be produced on her field, but because of being in the program, she has 14 bags of cotton, and 3 of them repay her revolving loan fund loan, and then the others she has that she can sell at market, and she now has money in her pocket. And what Jim has understood is that by sharing those stories with our employees, that they are moved and they really feel very powerfully impacted about the work that they're doing. That a miner who's working in Central Florida on phosphate production, from the mine all the way to producing it, is able to see that what they're doing on a day-to-day basis can really make a difference. And sure. I've had miners come up to me with tears in their eyes, I mean, big burly guys, just saying, I am so proud that my company is doing this. And there is nothing that anyone could say to tell them otherwise, that they know that deep in their heart that what they're doing every day is making a difference around the world.
That's great. That's great. Kind of that purpose-driven goals initiatives. So making a difference. We'll talk about metrics here in a bit in society. There is sort of that other school of thought who's saying, well, what's in it for the company? What are you all finding? And I know at IBM you kind of measure a lot of internal drivers and others, but what as the CEO and what's the CFO saying about this stuff?
Right. I mean, for us, as I mentioned before, she not only knows the programs, so it's not something alien. Aside from running this billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar company, she knows our philanthropic initiatives. She knows each one of them, supports them. And again, she's hearing from employees. So aside from those who have gone, whether on Smarter Cities Challenge or those who have gone on Corporate Service Corps assignments, we have a support system for any IBM volunteer who wants to make a difference in their community, and it's called On Demand Community.
Sure.
And through On Demand Community, we're paying nonprofit organizations either cash or technology when an employee volunteers 40 hours over a year to a specific organization, whether they do it along with other colleagues, or they do, and these are also applicable to IBM retirees, or they do it individually or as a team, and they use the resources that are available on On-Demand Community. I myself have been able to be a volunteer principal for a day in a school that I attended when I first came to this country, and I've been doing that for 6 years, and my investment in that school has multiplied each year because of the way IBM supports my volunteerism. So Ginny hears that. For her also, the programs like Smarter Cities Challenge and Corporate Service Corps, as they're developing leadership skills, this is an issue that's very important to her as well. She is requiring every single IBMer to dedicate 40 hours of professional development every year. And we have to track it, and we have to show that we're making ourselves, gaining new skills every single year. So all of these programs are supporting that effort. We're supporting volunteerism, which is bred in every IBMer's being, and then she's hearing these great stories from clients that have gone on some of these assignments, as well as how we've integrated them into our own corporate giving strategy.
Did you give detention wearing the principal? Anybody get detention or
no? No, I gave everybody 2 hours of lunch.
Yeah, that's good. That's the kind of principal you wanted. But it sounds like, so you're seeing greater employee engagement.
Yes.
You're seeing people are developing new sets of skills within it. Are you creating new market opportunities? Are you seeing that as well?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, we're not in it to make business. We're not going in sitting with the mayor, and we're not bringing the sales team. But obviously, if there's some opportunities that open up, that's okay too.
And then you're bringing customers along in this as
and
well.
We're, yes,
which could happen. Okay,
in Corporate Service Corps, we do.
How about in Mosaic? I mean, are you seeing business benefits, so-called business benefits as well from your efforts?
Absolutely, we are.
Okay.
So originally, the projects just started as a way to be able to give back to the communities in which we operated, or we were selling our product, or just with relationships, but it was purely charitable. But out of all of that, our commercial team, specifically the agronomy team, has been thrilled to be able to say, wow, we have done this on commercial scale agriculture, where our science-based approaches and are being able to work on best practices with our distributors and are showing how our product can make a difference. But it can also happen on the small scale, that it doesn't have to just be large farms, that farmers who have never had any agronomic training, they don't know how far apart to space their rows of crops, they don't know how far apart to put their seed, that through basic practices that we can work with them in a way that they, and they're seeing results. That's a great story for our agronomy team to tell. Also, I would say that, specifically in Guatemala, by being able to partner with Helps International and our customer, Desagro, that is a unique way of our company being able to partner across our supply chain. It's not simply just having it be where we're working with a nonprofit, we're integrating another partner in there. And then there are markets where there maybe hasn't been as much trust. In India, we're working in very rural Muslim communities where they're very closed and they're not used to working with companies. And so having an implementing partner that we work with like IRAD, they've been able to really bridge that gap and be able to show that, wow, some companies do have integrity and they are making investments for the right reason, and we're able to build some relationships in that way. And then when you talk about new market development in Africa, we don't sell product in Africa at all. We only have been bringing product there for Millennium Promise. But it's through our relationships that we've developed and some of the work that we've been doing, we're now having people coming to us and saying, why aren't you selling in Africa? Is this a market that you all would consider? So, you know, definitely these kinds of projects can open up to new conversations that companies have never had.
And I just want to add that also employee retention for us is so important, and these programs are doing just that. So for Corporate Service Corps, for example, we did a survey of about 575, we got responses from 575 alumni, Corporate Service Corps alumni, and 9 out of 10 of them said that their participation in Corporate Service Corps not only did change their lives, but it also made them want to stay at IBM. And there was a marketing executive who actually wrote to us in the survey indicating that there was a competitor that actually was trying to recruit her, and she turned them down. She had already been to Jakarta, and she said, no, I want to stay with this company. Money doesn't buy that. And even at a higher rate that she was being offered, which we heard before, that money is not the only answer.
Factor. Sure,
That's
as we're seeing among the millennials.
She felt a real sense of belonging.
We've seen that, right.
Yeah,
okay, great.
so it made a great
So you
impact.
almost have a sense here of, you know, we call it philanthropy or societal investment, not only as R&D, but as people development.
Absolutely.
I mean, these are just elements to kind of turbocharge other efforts and initiatives. Yeah. Well, one more question, then we'll open it up to the audience for some questions as we have time. Is there a couple of key measures that you all look for as you are your programs, whether it's the Mosaic Villages or the Smarter Cities? What are the kind of measures that you all track and look for and report back?
Well, we started out having ideas around a lot of KPIs that we could track, but really ultimately for us, when we've been working with these partners, we care about yield increases.
Okay.
So we go in, we do some baseline soil testing, we figure out what the right formula is, a fertilizer that these farmers need, what crops are that they want to produce, and then we work with them in creating the right kind of plan for their farming system. And then what we track out of all of that is what the yields are, being able to help them see yield increases year after year. And overall for the program, there are 3 to 5 times yield increases over traditional farming practices, which means that out of that, there's an offshoot of other indicators. Farmers, by having more money in their pocket, they're able to make sure that they can send their kids to school, buy shoes for their kids. They can invest in their farming operations in a way that they haven't previously been able to do that. They can consider cash crops. So out of being able to just have enough food to eat and break the cycle of poverty that their families have been into, and then having a surplus, they're able to see so many much more rewards.
That's incredible. I mean, that's these subsistence farmers, and there's still over 1 billion in the world, are getting by literally crop to crop. You fail, and it's a huge disaster. Absolutely. And this is just creating. Now, I did understand that it's created an issue, which is what do you do with the extra crops, right? That becomes a bit of a challenge.
Well, they actually are going out to market now. They're having to understand what it means to sell in a marketplace now. And but what it's allowing for is greater economic development in their overall community. So it's not where people who have been having failing farms for years and the men have to go somewhere else to get a job because they can't even grow enough. They're able to invest in their communities, and they're seeing co-ops sprouting out of that, and connection to some of the other selling institutions in their countries.
Right. Any key metrics from an IBM perspective that are kind of the drivers here?
Sure. So obviously, giving us access to new markets is always great.
Okay.
But with Smarter Cities Challenge, what we're looking at is seeing cities change right before our eyes. And I'm not saying that 1 4-week engagement is going to completely change, is a game changer. But in some cities, it has done that. Like in Syracuse, for example, they had a real problem with many vacant lots, like 4,000. And they developed, through our engagement, the first ever land bank. And what that did was it spurred the economic growth in Syracuse. They now have a good tax base, and they're projecting, $18 million in tax base over the next 8 years. So for us, it's those programs. We also have seen a revitalization in the downtown area in Jacksonville. What they asked us to do was, nobody's coming to Jacksonville. What is it that we can do to rebuild our, the center of our city? And so again, we work with them to develop a plan. And just that 4-week engagement, that just means we're physically there for those 4 weeks. 24/7, but our corporate citizenship team follows up at every, we're still working on programs that we started at the beginning. So for us, it's, those metrics and how we're changing cities. In corporate service corps, it's about retention. It's about which new markets have we opened for IBM. And then with on-demand community, which is our volunteer, and I've just skimmed, there's like so many programs, but we don't have the time. But with on-demand community, we've basically, our employees and retirees have volunteered, 245,000 IBMers and retirees have volunteered 16 million hours around the world. So those are okay metrics.
Okay, great. So it's interesting. I mean, you have a kind of a measure here of yields as being a big driver. You've got a number of measures. Some are a lot about employee engagement, about hours that people have been able to give back, and then about specific achievements within various communities.
Right.
That's terrific. That's great. Let's give a big round of applause to these terrific guys and really thank everybody for the great work. Very good stuff. That was terrific. Thank you.